Hey guys, how's it going today? This is Mr. Zarea here at Landrum Middle School, and today we're going to take a look at how to use the scroll saw and understand and know all of its parts. Before we do anything, just remember, always use your brain. Make sure that you think things through, okay? This is a scroll saw. This is going to be one of the machines that you use to cut out thin pieces of wood in pretty intricate designs. It's a really fun machine to use, and it's a really good beginner machine for any woodworker to start with. First, let's take a look at the different parts of the scroll saw. All machines that sit on the floor are going to have some sort of legs or some sort of box that they sit on. This is going to be considered the base. Coming up from the base, you're going to see a black knob right here in the front. This black knob is an angle adjustment knob. If I loosen it, it'll allow me to tilt the table left or right to create a different angle in my cut. Coming up from the angle adjustment, we have this flat surface, where I'm going to be doing all my work from. This is called the table. Coming through the center of the table is a thin, sharp blade, and this is actually called the blade. This is going to be moving up and down, doing all the cutting as I'm trying to cut this piece of wood. Around that blade is going to be this silver part, and this is called a hold down foot. This is used to hold down the piece of wood so it doesn't jump up and down, and it also prevents me from cutting my fingers because it blocks my finger from being pushed into the blade. We also have this hose right here, which when this machine is running, it'll blow out air to blow away all the sawdust from my piece of wood that I'm cutting. This hose is called the blower hose, okay? And then coming up from there, we have this big red button. This is the power switch. Rock it forward to turn it on, rock it back to turn it off. And then we have a black knob here that allows me to adjust the speed to make the blade go slower or faster. On this particular machine, it also has a light or a lamp. Typically I don't use these, so I'm not going to actually plug this in whenever we do this. Now that we know all the parts, the next thing that we need to do is figure out what do we have to do to prepare ourselves to actually use this machine. In order to use any machine in the wood shop, there's a couple of safety items that you have to take care of. Number one, you always have to make sure that you're wearing your safety glasses. Number two, you've got to make sure that you're tucking in your shirt. Number three, you can't have any long sleeves or sweaters on or jackets. I need to be able to see from your elbows all the way down to the tips of your fingers, so nothing's going to get hung up in the machine. The next thing is no rings, no watches, no necklaces, no lanyards, no bracelets, no dangling earrings, nothing of that that's going to get hung up in the machine. You'll notice that I always wear my watch and my ring because you're not really worried about what happens to my fingers and my hand, but I'm definitely worried about what happens to you. The last thing, which I don't have the problem with, is you always have to tie your hair back. So you'd have to use a rubber band or a scrunchie or some sort of hair tie to tie your hair back, keep it out of the way so that you can see what you're doing when you're cutting. Now that we've taken care of those things, the first thing that I want to do when I come to this machine is I need to have a plan as to exactly what it is that I want to do. In this case, I've just hand-drawn a heart. I want to cut out this heart using this machine. So I have a plan. Now that I have a plan, I'm going to come to the machine. I want to make sure that it's unplugged. I can see the cables are right here, so I know it's not plugged in. I want to then blow off all the sawdust from the table, making sure that there's nothing that's going to get in my way as I'm using the machine. Once I've taken care of that, I can set my piece down, and I'm going to pluck the blade. It should have a high-pitched sound just like a guitar string. If it doesn't, come get me so I can figure out how we can tighten that blade. If the blade's not tight, it's not going to cut. Okay? The next step is you're going to take your piece of wood and you're going to set it next to the blade. Okay? Set it next to the blade, and you want to adjust this hold-down foot so that it is able to hold down the piece of wood without holding it so tight that you can't move it. The way that you do that is you adjust the knob on the left-hand side. So I'm going to loosen it up, and then I'm going to take the piece of wood and I'm going to set it right in front of the blade, and I'm going to place the hold-down foot on top of that piece of wood, and then I'm going to tighten it in place. This does not keep the wood from jumping up and down all the time, but it certainly does help. So I think that's pretty good right there. And then the next thing I do before I plug it in, I'm going to take the air hose and I'm going to point it behind the blade, but downward towards the piece of wood. What this is going to do is blow away the sawdust, so as I cut, I can still see my line that I'm trying to cut. Now that I've taken care of all those items, I'm ready to plug this in. This one has two cables specifically because one is for the lamp, the other one's for the actual machine. If there are two cables, the one with the little label here, this is the lamp. I'm just going to drop that. The other one is going to be the actual machine, so I'm going to take this plug and I'm going to go plug it in. I want to make sure that I plug it all the way in without electrocuting myself by touching the plug as I'm pushing it in. Now that I've done that, I'm actually ready to use the machine. So I always want to stand directly in front of the blade. So I always try to imagine an imaginary line coming from the blade to my belly button. This is called the cut line. Anything that passes that cut line or goes over that cut line, if I continue to push it forward, it's going to cut. Okay? So I want to make sure that I don't cross my fingers in front of that cut line as I'm pushing forward. So I want to make sure that I'm centered on the machine. Once I'm centered on the machine, I'm actually ready to cut. So all I have to do now is turn the machine on and adjust the speed. So I'm going to keep it at a kind of a slower speed. There's no rush. So I'm going to simply find a starting point. I'm going to start here. I'm going to keep my fingers away from the blade, and I'm slowly going to push the piece of wood into the machine, and I'm going to make sure that I keep the blade just on the outside of the line that I drew. If I cut actually on the line and I accidentally make a mistake, then what's going to happen is I don't have enough wood left over to fix it. But if I give myself a little bit of wiggle room, I can go back and I can fix it by sanding or by filing it down. So I'm actually doing kind of a very poor job following this line, but that's okay, because there's always the sander and there's always the hand file to fix that problem. So this is kind of the rough cut that I have so far, and I'm going to try to neaten this up just a little bit by following closer to the line. And there's that cut. Now this machine is a little bit different than what you might be normally thinking of how you would cut something, because in this case the blade stays in one spot and you have to move the piece of wood around to cut it out. So I'm finished. Here's my heart. Doesn't look great, but that's okay. This is just to demonstrate something. Once I've done that, I want to clean the machine off, make sure that I've turned it off. Then I'm going to go back over to where I plugged it in. I'm going to unplug the machine, put the cable over top of it so we know that it's unplugged, and then all the mess that I have created, I need to make sure that I sweep it up and clean it up so the shop is safe for the next person. So, this is the scroll saw. Remember, anytime you guys are doing something, make sure you use your brain. Make sure you think it through, and always do the right thing. Take it easy.